Imagine making a seemingly victimless, completely private choice in the darkness of your own bedroom. Like you bury a secret.
Right, you just smooth over the evidence.
Exactly. You go to sleep thinking this choice is yours alone, totally contained within your own four walls. But the very next day, because of that solitary, unseen choice, 36 of your neighbors drop dead.
Yeah, it's wild. We're looking at the terrifying illusion of the victimless secret today.
We really are. Welcome to the deep dive. We're so thrilled you're joining us today to explore a really fascinating stack of sources.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we are stepping into a narrative landscape that just, well, it completely shatters the modern assumption of rugged individualism.
It does. We're examining the stark, dramatic historical narrative of Joshua chapter 7, the ancient account of a man named Achan. And to give us some serious analytical depth regarding the psychology of this event, we're layering in Charles Spurgeon's monumental 19th century commentary on the Psalms, The Treasury of David.
Yeah, which is just incredible. It forces us to confront human psychology at its most vulnerable, secretive, and honestly, its most destructive.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to navigate the anatomy of Achan's transgression, discovering how this specific historical crime reveals the underlying mechanics of human compartmentalization, how those tendencies echo through the poetic theology of the Psalms, and, what that ancient psychology means for you today.
Right, because you have a raw historical event in the book of Joshua dealing with military strategy and communal catastrophe,
Right.
paired with Spurgeon's curation of centuries of reflection. It shows how these exact same behavioral loops, seeing, coveting, taking, and hiding, they play out constantly in our own internal lives.
Definitely. I mean, we need to start by understanding the sheer psychological whiplash of the historical context here. The nation of Israel is fresh off an unprecedented and miraculous victory at the heavily fortified city of Jericho.
Oh, morale must have been off the charts.
Unbelievable. The walls have fallen, the city is taken, and, it's not just a military win. It's this cosmic validation that the divine is fighting their battles. So following this high, Joshua sends spies out to scout the next target, which is the eastern town of Ai.
And the spies return, and their report is, well, it's practically glowing with arrogance.
Yeah, they're super confident.
Too confident. They survey Ai and essentially tell Joshua not to even bother mobilizing the entire army. The tactical advice they give is send 2,000 or 3,000 men for only a few people live there.
Right.
They view Ai not as a legitimate military threat, but just like a minor speed bump on their conquest of the region. They're operating on the assumption of absolute invincibility.
And Joshua follows the advice. He sends the 3,000 men, but instead of an easy victory, they are absolutely routed. It's a sudden, brutal disaster.
A total shock to the system.
Yeah. The men of Ai chase the Israelite forces from the city gates all the way down to the stone quarries, striking them down on the slopes. 36 Israelite soldiers are slaughtered, and the text provides this incredibly visceral description of the emotional fallout. It says the hearts of the people melted in fear and became like water.
It's just profound. I mean, the people just experienced the ultimate supernatural intervention at Jericho. They felt untouchable.
Right, and suddenly they're running in terror from a much smaller, seemingly insignificant enemy.
Exactly. And Joshua, the commander, is utterly devastated. He tears his clothes, falls face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and just stays there in the dirt until evening.
Which is a huge deal.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
In the ancient Near East, tearing your clothes wasn't just an expression of sadness. It was a physical manifestation of a torn universe. It signaled a cosmic panic.
Wow.
Joshua is pleading with God, pouring out his terror that the surrounding Canaanites will hear about this tactical weakness and just wipe their name from the earth.
And God's response to Joshua's desperate prayer is what truly shifts the narrative from, like, a military history to a psychological thriller.
Yeah, it really takes a turn.
God doesn't offer comfort or a new tactical maneuver at all. In verse 10, the response is shockingly abrupt. God says, "Stand up. What are you doing down on your face?"
What's fascinating here is the sheer sternness of that divine command. God entirely bypasses Joshua's emotional crisis to address a hidden underlying reality.
Right, the real issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The text states that Israel cannot stand against their enemies because there is an internal infection. God says Israel has sinned and violated the covenant. Someone in the camp has taken the devoted things, what the Hebrew text calls harem.
We should define that because harem isn't just, a rule against looting.
Right, no. It translates roughly to things irrevocably given over to the Lord, meant to be totally destroyed or placed in the sacred treasury. It's essentially a spiritual quarantine zone.
So you really don't mess with it.
Not at all. By taking the harem, an individual wasn't just stealing property, they were taking something ontologically designated for the divine and bringing that radioactive material into their own home. God declares they have stolen, they have lied, and they have hidden these things among their own possessions.
Which means Joshua is mourning a tactical military failure, but the reality is a severe moral and communal breach.
Exactly.
So to cure it, God initiates this tension-filled forensic investigation, like a net that is slowly tightening. God commands the nation to present themselves systematically the next morning. Try to imagine the suspense of this process. You have millions of people, and the leadership begins casting lots.
Yeah, and the casting of lots in this era likely involved the Urim and Thummim, which were sacred stones kept in the high priest's breastplate. They provided binary yes or no answers.
So it was essentially an ancient divine lie detector test.
That's a great way to put it.
The terror of that slow elimination process must have been unbearable. First, the lot isolates the entire tribe of Judah. You can imagine the collective exhale of the other tribes, and then the sudden, suffocating silence falling over Judah.
Oh, definitely.
The net gets tighter. From Judah, the lot falls on the Zerahite clan. Then it narrows to the family of Zimri. And finally, the lot isolates one single, solitary individual, Achan, son of Carmi. The net has closed.
The psychological weight of that moment is just staggering.
I can't even imagine.
Achan has stood there for hours, watching the inevitable approach, knowing exactly what is buried beneath his floorboards. Joshua confronts him, and Achan finally confesses.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the specific anatomy of Achan's crime. He tells Joshua, "It is true, I have sinned." And then he details his thought process and the plunder itself.
He's very specific.
He is. He says he saw a beautiful robe from Babylonia. The text specifies Shinar along with 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels.
To translate that into terms we can visualize, a Babylonian robe was a highly conspicuous, luxurious imported garment. It was the equivalent of stealing a custom-tailored designer suit, or even a high-end luxury vehicle.
Right. And the money.
200 shekels of silver equates to about 5 pounds of solid silver. The gold bar is about 1.25 pounds. So he didn't casually pocket a few stray coins. He systematically hauled a heavy, substantial amount of precious metal and a massive, conspicuous garment back to his camp.
And he explicitly breaks down the mechanics of the temptation. He says, "I coveted them and took them." But the crucial detail of his confession is the location. He tells Joshua, "They are hidden in the ground inside my tent, with the silver underneath."
That phrase, "inside my tent," is the linchpin to understanding the psychology of cognitive dissonance and secret sin.
How so?
Well, Achan operates under a grand, almost absurd illusion. He somehow convinced himself that the physical darkness of his tent and the few inches of literal dirt would conceal his actions from an omniscient God.
It's the ultimate human rationalization. We compartmentalize. Achan smoothed the dirt over, rolled out his sleeping mat, and probably went to bed thinking the entire event was successfully contained within the boundaries of his personal space. Like, as long as no one sees it, it is my private business.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and bring in our second source, Charles Spurgeon's Treasury of David, we see this exact psychological trap analyzed in the Psalms.
Oh, that's right.
Spurgeon's commentary on Psalm 106 focuses on a recurring phrase, how the Israelites repeatedly provoked him to anger with their inventions. Achan literally invented a way to hide his plunder. He engineered a secret compartment, digging a hole to accommodate his deceit.
He used his human creativity specifically for the purpose of concealment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Spurgeon's analysis points out that this kind of behavioral invention, what he calls a dalliance with sin, is fatal to spiritual liberty. Yes. The great illusion of the hidden tent is the belief that buried actions remain isolated. Achan believed his secret was inert, safely stored away. In reality, the text proposes that the hidden hole in his tent was an active spiritual snare that had already entangled the entire nation.
Okay, wait. I struggle with this concept heavily, and I think a lot of people listening will too. Achan makes a terrible choice. He steals the silver, he hides the robe. But why does God allow 36 completely innocent men to die on the slopes of Ai for a crime they didn't commit and knew nothing about?
It's a tough question.
It is.
Yeah.
Doesn't this ancient concept of communal punishment feel incredibly unjust or even entirely alien to a modern listener?
It does feel alien, mostly because we view the world through the lens of Western individualism. We see society as a massive collection of disconnected atomic individuals. Like, if my neighbor commits a crime, I am not culpable.
Right.
But the ancient Near Eastern worldview operates on the principle of corporate solidarity.
Meaning the community is viewed as a single living organism.
Exactly. In their theology, Israel wasn't a collection of people. It was a single body bound by a covenant. If your hand touches a hot stove, your entire body registers the pain and your whole body suffers the burn.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Achan wasn't just a rogue individual. His tent was a vital organ in the body of Israel. When he brought the radioactive harem into his tent, the infection spread instantly to the whole host.
So the narrative absolutely rejects the premise of a private life that doesn't bleed into the public reality.
Entirely.
And the physical evidence of Achan's secret thought life is suddenly dragged out into the blinding Middle Eastern sun. Messengers run to the tent, dig up the dirt, and spread the heavy gold, the silver, and the Babylonian robe out before the Lord.
And the visceral reality of the fallout is catastrophic. Joshua looks at Achan and asks, "Why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today."
Yeah.
The consequence doesn't just fall on Achan. He, his sons, his daughters, his cattle, his livestock, his tent, and everything he owns are taken to a location that becomes permanently known as the Valley of Achor.
Which literally translates to the Valley of Trouble. Achan and his entire family are stoned, they are burned, and a massive pile of rocks is heaped over them. It's a severe, brutal end to the narrative.
It is deeply sobering because it strips away our modern defense mechanisms. It forces the reader to confront the reality that consequence is communal.
It really does. When you look at Spurgeon's commentary on the Psalms, we see this concept of the ripple effect highlighted through a brilliant contrast. In the notes on Psalm 106, Spurgeon draws heavily on the story of another Israelite Phinehas.
Oh yes, I love this comparison.
Spurgeon includes a quote from the writer Joseph Hall, who states, "The revenge of God sets out ever after the sin." Hall is arguing that consequence is essentially a hunter. It tracks the transgression relentlessly.
Just as the casting of the Urim and Thummim tracked down Achan through the tribes and clans.
Exactly. But the contrast is in the action taken. Achan hides his selfish choice in the dark, and it radiates a deadly plague of trouble, costing 36 soldiers their lives and destroying his own children. Phinehas does the opposite.
Right, his response is public.
Yes. The psalm says, "Then stood up Phinehas and executed judgment." He takes bold, righteous, public action in the light against corruption and the ripple effect. The text says it stayed a deadly plague. It brought mercy to the entire community.
Both accounts definitively prove the core thesis of the text. Our unseen, personal choices are never quarantined.
Never.
The daily habits we indulge, the secrets we bury, the small compromises we make, they act as either a toxin leaking into the groundwater of our communities, our workplaces, and our families, or they act as a source of life and integrity.
So what does this all mean? We have spent this entire time dissecting the harsh, stony reality of the Valley of Achor. It's a heavy, Old Testament narrative ending with a pile of rocks over a ruined family. How do we transition from this stark historical warning into practical psychological hope for you, the listener, today?
Well, we find the hope by examining the text's proposed cure, which is the psychological necessity of bringing things into the light. Spurgeon's notes on Psalm 107 provide a crucial pivot here.
Okay, what does he say?
The psalmist describes people who are fools because of their transgression. They are afflicted by their own buried choices, to the point where their soul abhors food and they draw near unto the gates of death. They're basically trapped in a psychological and spiritual prison of their own making.
Wow. That perfectly describes the sheer, crushing anxiety Achan must have felt, sitting in his tent, listening to the wailing of the 36 widows in the camp, knowing exactly what was buried under his floorboards.
The guilt must have been agonizing.
The burden of maintaining a dual life is just exhausting.
It is entirely unsustainable. But the turning point in Psalm 107 is the exact step Achan failed to take voluntarily.
Right.
The psalm says, "Then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble." They expose the reality of their condition, and the response isn't an executioner. The text says, "He sent his word and healed them."
He sent his word and healed them. That is powerful.
This raises an important question. How do we deal with our own hidden, devoted things? The modern temptations to hide our habits, our financial secrets, our browser histories, our silent resentments in the dark of our own contemporary tents.
Yeah, we all have those tents.
We do. And the source material highlights a profound concept from the Puritan writer George Swinnock. He writes, "Conscience is God's prisoner. All the world cannot open the iron gate, knock off the shackles, and set the poor prisoner at liberty till God speak the word.
Conscience is God's prisoner. That is a hauntingly accurate description of guilt. When you're hiding something, you're simultaneously the warden and the inmate of your own personal jail.
Exactly. The texts collectively argue that freedom never comes from burying the silver deeper.
Right, just piling more dirt on it doesn't help.
No, it doesn't come from managing the dirt floor of the tent more carefully. Hiding our struggles in the dark until we are cornered by the inevitable casting of lots only ensures that the consequence will maximize its destructive radius. The mechanism for release, the only path to liberty for the captive conscience, is exposure.
It comes through active voluntary confession. It comes from finding trusted community support and pulling the hidden things into the light. The great deception of the tent is that exposure will bring destruction.
Yes.
We fear the light because we think it will ruin us. But the reality presented in these texts is that exposure is the prerequisite for healing. Achan waited until the absolute last possible second, until the lot fell on his specific name, to admit the truth.
Which was too late.
Way too late.
Okay.
The psychological application for us is that we do not have to wait to be caught.
We have the agency to step into the light voluntarily. We can own our actions, seek accountability, and stop the toxic ripple effect before it claims the metaphorical 36 men at AI. It's a profound trajectory from the valley of trouble to the promise of a healed conscience.
It really is. We started by looking at the psychological high of Jericho, only to crash into the chaotic, devastating defeat at AI.
Yeah.
We unpacked the anatomy of Achan's transgression, dissecting the psychological illusion of his buried treasure, the fundamental Hyundis lie that dirt and darkness can successfully conceal reality.
Yeah, that illusion is so dangerous.
And finally, we moved through the ancient concept of corporate solidarity into the Psalms, finding that the only mechanism to heal the internal prison of the conscience is bringing our hidden struggles completely out of the tent and into the light.
Because the narrative demands that we recognize our profound connection to the people around us.
It does. And so we want to leave you with a final provocative reflection, something to mull over on your own that builds directly on the history we've explored today. Achan's name became permanently fused to the Valley of Trouble.
Yeah.
The book of Joshua notes that the physical, massive pile of rocks heaped over him and his family remain there to this day. It served as a permanent geographic marker in the ancient world, a towering monument to hidden sin and its communal devastation.
A physical reminder for everyone who walked by.
Exactly. So think about your own life and the invisible architecture you are building right now. What kind of memorial are you constructing with your daily, unseen choices in your own personal tent? Are you secretly compiling a monument of hidden trouble that will eventually collapse outward onto the people who trust you? Or are your unseen choices building a testament to transparency, accountability, and grace?
That is the ultimate challenge the Valley of Achor leaves with us.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We always appreciate you taking the time to explore the fascinating mechanics of these historical and psychological texts with us. Until next time, take care and keep learning.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.